Ladies and gentlemen, this comes down to safety and whether or not police officers can do their job effectively. But before I get into my point of positive matter and really get down to the crux of this issue, I want to go over a little refutation first, so we can understand the last speaker. The last speaker got up here and had some good extension. You know, he talked about freedom of speech, freedom of the press, but there's tons of limits to freedom of the speech, right? You can't yell fire in a building. You can't libel someone. You can't slander them. Those are limits that are constitutional and well respected in society, and especially with like the freedom of the press. The idea that I'm going to bring to you today is that it's an invasion of your privacy. You can't record someone in their building. You can't record someone without their consent in their home. You can't go out in public and record someone's conversation in many states, and that's what we're saying is we're going to change to this right here. So they've really missed the point, and they're talking about like, oh, police officers are going to miss major crimes. No, it's not an either-or situation. We're changing to make sure that society is a better place by actually protecting privacy and their consent. And then like, oh, murders and rapists are going to be with people that just recorded a cop. It's not about that. It's about security, and I'm going to show you how this is an invasion of these police officers' privacy. And then the money issue, I mean, we have good laws because it's important to have good laws, not because it costs money. It's kind of a straw man argument. And then this has nothing to do with Egypt because we're the United States of America, and we have pretty good constitutional limits on government. But before, no, let me go there with a lot of stuff. So this is about surveillance of the police. So we're changing the law in this state to have a two-party consent. So you have to have two parties consenting to be recording. In many states, it's only one, which means I can record our phone conversation, or I can record you a video camera because I'm still on this. We're saying like 12 states have in the United States. Here in Hawaii, we're going to have a two-party consent, which means I have to get your consent before I record you audio and visual. So we define law enforcement officer, and we agree with that. So it's an interesting discussion about courts recording themselves because right now, under the status quo, courts record themselves, and they don't allow private people to come in and record them because they are saying that it's in the same way that we're talking about police officers. We are okay with transparency. We're okay with police officers recording all of their interactions, but we want it held in the police officers' arena. So if there's any issues, then an independent internal affairs can go in there and get that recording. And I have some extension that I'm going to talk about in a second about how we can make the system even better. But go ahead, you have a question.
Okay, so if a private citizen goes ahead and breaks this law and makes a recording, will that recording be admissible in court as evidence?
I don't think that matters. I think what matters is that the wiretapping and eavesdropping laws are what you guys don't acknowledge and don't respect. And we're saying that people have privacy and consent. So they're now trying to go into like this loophole. Anyways, so these laws, we're saying, are intended to protect privacy of people with their consent, as I said. Recording is intentionally intruding in someone's private affair. That's the violation that we're changing in the law. So the number one issue that I'm going to bring to you is safety. I'm going to bring it in a different way, not about getting shot, but actually about how police officers aren't going to be able to do their jobs as well. When a police officer goes to arrest a criminal, right, someone just committed a crime and robbed a bank, a police officer goes up to them and grabs them in a certain way, right? We don't know exactly how that happened, but they grab their arm and they grab their neck and they put their handcuffs in a special way and they throw them on the ground. There's all techniques that police practice. There's a technical correct way to do that. Now in prison, bad people practice how to defuse it. Bad people practice how to get out of handcuffs, how to pick locks. We don't want bad people to record police officers' techniques. SWAT raids, we don't want police officers to record bad people to record SWAT raids and say, okay, then 12 people go through the front door, one of them has a baton, one of them has the shotgun here, one of them has whatever here, and then practice how to defuse police officers when they're being arrested. We think that this is a huge public safety because bad people are going to practice techniques to kill the cops when they're being arrested, and a lot of bad people kill cops when they get arrested, which we think is a really bad situation. So, we can talk about separatists, like anti-government people. There's a lot of people that don't like the government that do practice these kind of things out in their militia movements. We can talk about the warrant suspect that I just mentioned, but I'll take another question, and I already took you, so I'll just call back.
Could you give me an example of where this actually occurred within today's times where it's not illegal to record police officers?
Well, there's a reason that 12 states ban this, and we're saying that the movement's going towards that, and I'll give you some more reasons. So another huge issue with this is obstruction of justice. So if you're being arrested and somebody comes up here and starts recording your conversation, or if the police officer is talking to a witness and taking their statement, if a woman was raped at 7-Eleven, a police officer comes to record what happened. And he's recording what happened to this woman that was raped, and some kid just comes over and is like, oh, I hope this cop doesn't start tasing everybody as they, whatever. If you're recording that and you overhear the woman talking about a rape, we don't think that kind of thing is acceptable. We don't think that that conversation is a part of a third party. That's between a police officer and the person.
Yeah,
so that's obstruction of justice, which is my second extension point besides the safety. And my third is officers being vulnerable, so sorry not highlighting my speech extension. So officers being vulnerable slander. Now they talked about tech mischief over here. They said that that's was their name for it, right? Now, whether or not it's called tech mischief, or I'll call it being vulnerable to slander or libel, you know that a lot of people don't like cops. So if they can record a conversation and then cut out parts of it and make it sound worse, that happens. And this whole like, well, you can analyze the video. No, it can happen all the time. You could post a video online and then make a cop sound like something else was said. Or you could put that online, which we think is going to have a big issue with like witnesses. If you're recording a cop arresting a suspect and you put that online, if the viewers in the jury, let's say, watch that recording, they're going to be like, well, that's obviously the bad guy because he was the one arrested. But that's not necessarily so, because not always suspects aren't the guilty ones. So we think that there's contamination of juries. And like I said, our side over here is talking about alternative fixes for potential abuses. You know, they talk about dash cams. Dash cams usually have microphones with the police officer, so any conversation that's going on behind the car or in front of it is recorded. But in Britain, per se, they have shoulder cameras, where they have video cameras. Wherever the police officer goes, it records the conversation. And then everything that the police officer does is recorded. If there's any bad thing that goes on, internal affairs can take the tape, or the sergeant, or the independent police commission can take the tape, take all these recordings, and then find out if there's impropriety and fire them if they're a bad police officer. So, as we've said, what I was talking about earlier about, you know, interpersonal contact with police officers, I mean, that's disclosure of confidential information. I mean, police officers are, you know, talking about suspects, victims, court cases, medical records, financial records, anything that goes on in a case. And if that's recorded in public, we find that a problem to keep our judicial system safe. And I didn't even get into national security issues, about which my partner will talk about in a second, about how this makes it much worse. But we are proud to propose, because we think that recording it through our system and not allowing the private citizen to record it makes the system at a better place, makes everyone safer, and we are proud to propose.